One.
Live.
We're live. Okay, thank you all for joining us to the pre-proposal meeting for the Basalt Master Plan. This is a non-mandatory meeting, but we really appreciate you being here. Before we kind of kick off and describe the project, just want to tell you a couple things. One, we are being filmed by Grassroots TV. Amy Gabb is filming us, and we're live right now, and we'll keep the link up on the Basalt webpage. So, if you just go to Grassroots and go to Basalt, and then click on P&Z, you can watch on TV. But just remember, you are on TV, and we have to be mic'd. So what I'd like to do is kind of run through the introductions, run through the project, run through kind of our presentation, and then at the end, open it up to questions and answers. But when we do that piece of it, we'll need to come up to the mic. And if you've ever watched a town council meeting, sometimes we're reminded by Amy that we need to be speaking into the mic, and she might be adjusting things as we go along. So again, I'm Susan Phelp. I'm the planning director. We have James Lint here. He's the assistant planning director, and James is going to join in the presentation. Watkins Folk Gray is here. He's one of our staff planners, and his role is really that when we do questions later in this meeting, we're going to take questions from those of you who are in attendance first, and then we'll allow people that are watching live to kind of email us and ask questions, and we'll do that after we ask you guys questions. A couple important announcements. If you haven't been here at Town Hall, the restrooms are just around the corner. There's a drinking fountain around the corner too. We have this set up to last no more than till 4 o'clock, and that is really all the time it really should take. We should be done before that, but Amy also has to get up and film another meeting up in Aspen. And I think all of you did sign up on the sign-in sheet in the back, and everybody that signed up in the back or sends us an email will be included on our email list to answer any questions. So is that all pretty clear before I get started? So thank you again for being here. What we thought we would do today is really kind of give you some background description of the project itself, talk about the schedule, review the selection criteria, provide some other information, kind of highlight some of that, and at the end do the questions and answers. I think most of you know where Basalt is, but we are actually located in 2 counties between Pitkin and Eagle County. Our town boundary runs through the middle school track, the middle school, and few lane between the post office and the library. We are we're 20 minutes or a little more or less from the city of Aspen, kind of midway between Aspen and Glenwood Springs, which are pretty significant economic engines for the town of Basalt. So we get kind of the impact from the city of Aspen and Snowmass tourist economies, the good, bad, and kind of ugly, that we'll maybe touch on a little bit later. Our 3-mile planning area, as you know, under the state law, we kind of plan 3 miles within our jurisdiction, and because the town of Basalt is actually in 2 significant parts, kind of East Basalt and West Basalt, our 3-mile planning area is about 9 miles by 7 miles. Here, and Amy told me to make sure I hold the cursor for a while so the people that are watching on TV can see it, but this is the kind of the historic, where historic downtown is. The town of Basalt jumped public land and annexed a lot of land out here. This is where we now have Willits Town Center, which has about 560,000 square feet of approved development and newer residential neighborhoods here. This map is in your proposal. A lot of the locations and the description of when we're talking about things are kind of referenced on this map. Here you see the two asterisks for kind of the two key nodes, which are East Basalt, kind of the historic downtown, and West Basalt, and here's the Willits area. We also refer to key parcels in the base master plan work, and those parcels are labeled on this map. We also kind of highlight our satellite areas, which are, the South Side area, Jadwin-Stott, an original road, Highway 82 that are referenced in the proposal. We've highlighted kind of key entrances to Basalt. Basalt has a lot of entrances because we're located on both sides of Highway 82. Just so you have a little context of what you're looking at, the bright orange parcels are areas from our current master plan, land use master plan, which was adopted in 2007. And that master plan kind of used a light pastel when it was referring to places which we didn't think would change significantly over the life of the plan or already had entitlements. And areas that had darker colors were areas that we saw changing over the life of the plan. Goals of the project, just as kind of a highlight, the P&Z has had a major role in kind of setting the RFP for this project. They really kind of very much wanted a very visionary document, and they took that message to the town council. They've had a couple work session discussions with the town council, who the town council really supported them in that idea about being visionary. Number two is kind of building on the community values that have already been established, and a lot of those are listed in the proposal, which made the proposal really long, but we are trying to get across the idea that we're not starting from scratch. We're building on existing plans. One of the things that we reference is the town council's been working on their own strategic plan, and that we want the master plan to kind of be built from those principles. P&Z really thought they were emphasizing that they wanted this to be a very positive plan, more what we want, less what we don't want. And number five is referring to, making sure that there's buy-in with the town council. Most jurisdictions, the Planning and Zoning Commission adopts the master plan, like in Eagle County, and the county commission doesn't adopt it. Basalt's a home rule jurisdiction, so what that means is in the town of Basalt, both the P&Z and the town council adopt the master plan, and sometimes that has its own unique challenges. On one hand, you get a master plan in the end that both groups that are reviewing land use proposals and capital and the town council making financial decisions that they've bought on to. It does have its own challenges. In the 2007 plan, we ended up putting 3 asterisks in areas where the town council and the P&Z actually didn't agree. I'm just going to pause just to introduce that Michael Mahoney, who is our town manager, just joined us.
Mahoney?
What did I say?
Michael,
sorry. Ryan Mahoney.
You know
just-
you got it, right?
Yes. Well, you're behind the podium there. And the, and the last one is just making sure that we gain community support. We outlined in the proposal kind of 4 elements. The RFP is organized around those, and when we ask the consultants to respond on costs, we use the A, B, C, and D, and that'll come up a little later. The one is, A is just citizen participation. We were looking for the consultant's response on what is a good way of providing for citizen participation. We are having a request for proposals to prepare the survey as kind of a separate element. We outline that if you want to include that in your proposal as an optional service, go ahead. If you want to include coordinating with a consultant that's going to be doing the survey, include that as an optional service. So a key piece of the way the RFP is kind of structured is this idea of having an aspirational master plan, which is really the base plan, and then also creating the high aspiration plan, which is really building on the base plan. It's kind of an increment to the base plan. And James is going to highlight in a little bit some of the ideas between the high aspirational plan. And then D is the optional services, which can include the survey or other items that the consultant would like to offer to the town. Maybe kind of repeating the base master plan is there's a lot of values that are already in your RFP that we're expecting the consultant to look at. There's a number of key parcels and a lot of things that we're asking the consultant to look at. The next piece of that, though, is the high aspiration plan, and that really kind of deals mostly with the historic downtown area. James, do you want to kind of highlight a little more of that?
Yeah, the high aspirations plan is basically some additional elements that could be costed in the proposal related to, as Susan said, mainly the historic downtown area here in East Basalt. And these items are kind of described on pages 7 and 8 of the RFP. They include examining and identifying ideas for improving the Midland Avenue streetscape here, which is the main road going through downtown. And it's to foster additional dwell time and additional vitality here in the downtown area and ways to make that better. Also examining additional parking needs and strategic strategies for the historic downtown area and incorporating those strategies into the master plan itself. Other pieces of this would include examining the Basalt Center Circle parcel. It's also known as the BCC parcel, and you can actually see it out the window here. It's the old Clark's Market area over there. And to kind of look at the potential for development scenarios on that site and for the property that the town could use in considering and developing strategies to bring additional vitality to that site in the downtown area. There are some other more minor elements. It also includes the Willits area that was shown on the map earlier, kind of the other downtown to Basalt, the newer downtown, which would include reviewing the entitlements and the capital improvements in the Willits area that are already identified in our capital improvement plan, and kind of evaluating whether there are additional capital improvements that would be appropriate to be goals in the master plan. And then also connectivity is an important piece of the high aspirations plan. The town currently has goals related to connecting the different parts of downtown to the other areas such as Southside and Willits. So there would be an examination of additional connectivity pieces to the downtown. Do you have anything else?
Well, maybe the other piece of the high aspiration plan, and this came out of the first conversation that the P&Z had with the town council, and that was they really wanted the plan to be visionary, but they were kind of recognizing that visionary sometimes is expensive, so they were kind of breaking up the visionary component into two pieces, and one was kind of a financially constrained plan, and this would be like town Basalt spending, kind of as it typically would be, could be expended without going out for bonds, without borrowing money or doing a lot of creative financing. It might include developer contributions, but nothing significantly out of the the order. So that, we were kind of looking at, and this 1.5 million in 8 years, spending that. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this is centered around the downtown area, and, you know, we're seeing a lot of vitality in the Willis area, and, but people really love the historic downtown. So, you know, what improvements can we make to the historic downtown area? And there's challenges because this center loading area, currently, we have a center loading area. Is there a way to get around that? And there's the less expensive ideas of putting loading where existing parking is and widening the sidewalks, or can you use the Basalt Center Circle property in a more expensive approach, which gets really to the visionary plan. So the visionary plan is, okay, we're gonna still be a little constrained, you know, it's not that we're gonna be, you know, have $128 million a year to spend, but, you know, this one envisions that you would go out for a bond, get state grants, and make significant expenditures and investments in funding.
And to clarify, the high aspirational plan are basically elements to be costed to add to the base plan.
These maps were included in your proposal just to show kind of existing connectivity. This is just from an existing trail map that we have from the town of Basalt. So, you know, you can see where the current kind of trail networks are. This is an excerpt from the Parks, Open Space, and Trails Plan, which was adopted in 2013. This is West Basalt and this is East Basalt, just kind of highlighting that both the town of Basalt Town Council and the P&Z were really interested in additional connectivity. This is the draft of the Basalt strategic plan that has not been adopted yet by the town council, but has had a lot of work. And so we've been asking you to kind of build on these elements that are relevant for a master plan. Not everything that's in the strategic plan is really directly should be included in a master plan. Most of these areas that had to do with the built environment. This is what we're considering to be historic downtown. You are here. This is kind of the area that is what we call the BCC property. This is the famous CDC property, which is under a current land use proposal as we speak. And so this is our kind of our historic core of downtown. These are just excerpts from the current master plan, again, kind of showing the study area. This is the West Basalt future land use map. Again, kind of how we had done the current master plan is we're showing pastel as areas that already had entitlements, weren't significantly expected to change, and then these areas with dark colors were areas where we were going to see changes happening during the life of the plan. So a lot of things have changed. By way of example, Stotts Mill is now an approved development, and the Roaring Fork Club has a new proposal in here that is well under construction. This is an area, just like this is an easier map to kind of point to. This is kind of the Jadwin Stott area that we refer to, and this is the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park. One of the important kind of elements of how our plan works is we adopted the future land use plan in 2007, but we've kept the plan more current by adopting sub-area plans, and they're listed in your proposal. But by way of example, we have Parks, Open Space, and Trails Master Plan that we adopted in 2013. We adopted a master plan for kind of the Elgibel Crawford Mobile Home Park area earlier to kind of match what the efforts were that Eagle County was doing. And in 2015, we had a significant planning process that was called the Our Town planning process. And we adopted a new master plan for that area. So when I showed the map here, there's a white area here that says our town study area, and you refer to this map. One of the important kind of concepts is that we're building on existing plans. So we're not asking the consultant to revisit the key principles that came out of the our town planning effort. Some of those included the idea that we're going to have this big V from the corner of Midland Avenue and to Midland Spur here, and this is kind of what we call the big V. Also, just as a recognition that we currently have a land use application that we're actively reviewing on the CDC property that's called the Basalt River Park LLC development. This is how our current master plan deals with kind of giving ideas about what we anticipate in the downtown area that we're asking to look at. Here's the schedule. Of course, today we're Wednesday, the December 19th. We have until Thursday, December 27th for any additional questions. That's our deadline for that. Just as a note, the day before that we were submitting the proposal, we had a P&Z meeting. They kind of moved some dates back. So it is the 27th. It's not the 21st for the pre-proposal question deadline. All the proposals are due Thursday, January 31st at 2 p.m. On Friday, February 1st, by this date at 9 a.m., we'd like to have a digital copy of the proposal. So when you're submitting your sealed envelopes, you can include a flash drive of your proposal. But if you don't want to do it that way after the deadline, you can email it to us. We've seen people do it either way, putting a flash drive in the proposal or just emailing it separately, but we don't want to receive it before the deadline. Now, these other dates that aren't bold are proposed, our target deadlines for this. Thursday, February 7th, we have this as when we will be interviewing the firms that are shortlisted starting at 2 p.m. And this would be mandatory in person or Skype or something. Now, we'll to the extent that the people that are on the selection committee have some flexibility, we'll try to work with firms if they can't make that date. But it'll be also kind of dependent on our selection committee. Our goal is to make our decision by February 12th, and then have the contract approved by February 26th, notice to proceed the next day. And the goal, of course, was to have a master plan pretty well accepted by the town by the end of the year, with the formal adoption really to happen in 2020. One of the important things that we're asking the consultants to do is to provide the cost information in a format that's organized here. I don't care if you do it another way too, but we would like you to fill out this form where we have the price for public participation for the base plan, and if there's an additional price for the high, that increment would go here. It's the increment. B is the base master plan cost. C is the added cost for creating the high aspiration plan. So it doesn't include the price of the base plan. D is price for optional services, and just specify what that is, or if it's connected with this one was just connected with the survey. D2 was any other service the firm would like to offer. Would like to know the maximum price for each additional public meeting that's not included in your proposal. And it should include anything that you're going to need to prepare for the meeting and your travel. And then we also want standard hourly rates and clarifications on your costs. So if you're limiting the number of copies or limiting the number of meetings, we just kind of want to know that. And this is our selection criteria. One is the skill and experience demonstrated by the applicant. 2 is the price and ability of the applicant to contain costs to reasonable expectations. There's asterisk on this one, and I'll get to that in a second. 3 is understanding the goals of the project. 4 is the ability to follow instructions. 5 is the ability of the applicant to meet the time demands of the project. 6 is the ability to create graphics and maps that appropriately convey the desired information. And I'd like to highlight this one, number 6 and number 1. Because the P&Z and the town council want this to be a visionary document, I think they're really looking for something that impresses people, inspires people. And that's one, maybe the skill level that the town of Basalt doesn't have. You see by the jazziness of our PowerPoint presentation here. And just as a kind of a clarification, is price isn't expected to be the determining factor, but we're looking for highly skilled professional advice. We recognize it might involve travel expenses. That said, we're still looking at comparative cost and value for those services. I think one of the other things before I get to Q and A is just that the P&Z was interested, one of the things that, in submitting for the response is they're really looking for your approach, the consultant's approach to the project. So that will be another thing to kind of keep in mind as you're preparing the proposal. Now I'll open it up for questions. Now remember our rule, we have to come up to the mic. Huh? Yep.
Davis Farrer, Western Slope Consulting. How do you anticipate handling existing PUDs? Obviously, you can't come up with a plan that says, oh, let's rezone them to something else.
Well, let's use the Willits as an example. Willits is included in our kind of high aspiration plan. So we're really not looking at taking on the entitlements of Willits Town Center, but we would like the consultant to, at a high level, on Willits, we don't really need a deep dive, but if there are certain things that are maybe lacking in Willits Town Center that you think would really improve it, or if we had an opportunity to make a change in the future. But by way of example, Willits, we've spent a lot of recent time working on their entitlement documents, and the developer is working hard to kind of sell off the last remaining pieces. So if there's guidance that, if there's an opportunity to do this in the future, that this would be good, but we're not really envisioning kind of revisiting entitlements. Now, that said, it isn't like most of Basalt, for those of you guys who don't know, Basalt was originally created just like an old western town, zoning coming afterwards, and those original pieces are not in PUDs and have standard zoning. And then in the 90s, when most of Basalt was annexed, the newer parts, everything is in a PUD. So as a kind of planning principle, we've been trying to move out of PUDs, create other kind of zoning districts that aren't PUDs. So to the extent, I would say that there's things that might enhance, like if there's an opportunity to add ADUs or something, that would be fair game. But, we could spend more time, once the consultant is selected, kind of going over maybe developments that there might be an opportunity to make some changes. But we're not envisioning, particularly with anything that we've approved in the last 3 years, of taking on an entitled project. Is that helpful?
Thank you. Let's see, Eagle County about a year and a half ago met with Basalt Council and kind of talked about joint planning, joint master planning. Eagle County obviously is a stakeholder, but they're not a partner, correct?
That's correct. Do you want to take that?
Well, I was just gonna say, in the RFP, we've got some language about, meeting with Eagle
Right.
County's Planning Commission and potentially the county commissioners as kind of a stakeholder, referral group, but not necessarily being part of the plan.
Process, okay.
Yeah.
Last question. The strategic plan in the materials, I think 2019 strategic plan, talks about public works facility and the need for that. What about the governmental campus? Do you envision, I would assume that might be part of this whole analysis.
That could be part of your high visionary plan.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
Jesse Gregg with Zernan Associates. I was just wondering, how detailed of cost estimates do you see in this plan, or if any?
You mean in terms of the deliverables?
Right.
I don't see them as being really detailed. I think they're, as you know, if you were going to do really detailed cost estimates, it would be pretty expensive. I think that we would want a good solid basis behind what you're proposing, based on other examples.
Okay. Yeah, I just asked because of the $1.5 million budget. If the town expects that to be broken out into different spending categories for infrastructure or parks and trails.
This is really, the 1.5 is to implement the visionary piece of the plan. So, if you had parking solutions for downtown, it's not really to revisit our capital improvement plan, which, by the way, you could pull off the existing one. You can pull off the Basalt webpage under the administrative department, and you could pull off our current capital improvement plan. But it's not really to do our whole. It's to do the pieces of the implementing the plan itself.
And then, I guess along those same lines, there seems to be some detailed design of streetscape elements. I saw some language about water for plants, pots and stuff along Main Street. How detailed do you see those nodes being, I guess?
Well, in the high aspiration plan, within the budget that you're proposing, I think that they want a fair amount of detail of what is it that would make a wow. So I think they're looking for those kind of elements.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Hi, Patrick Raleigh with Stan Clausen Associates. If you could just unpack that phrase that you had about the council, this is what we hear and this is what we want. Could you explain that a little bit more in depth?
Well, that was almost a direct quote from one of the P&Z members, but I think what it was really getting to is that they were looking for the consultant team to gather the information from all the different groups that they meet with and the citizen participation process, and come and in the end meet with the council and make sure that the council was buying into what the plan. In the end, they were, I think, having the council kind of interpret, in the town of Basalt, you've been around, you hear, I don't want to grow, I want to grow. And in the end, the council kind of has to filter that out. I think that's what they were kind of recognizing it. They wanted to make sure that the plan was bought into by the town council. And I think that's one of the unique things about the town of Basalt, given that the P&Z adopts the plan and the town council adopts the plan. So in terms of the work itself, a lot of it is going to be with the P&Z, but in the end, both groups are going to have to buy into it.
Laura Kirk with DHM, and I just wanted to clarify, is the tree farm considered part of this planning process?
When we talked about the tree farm with the P&Z, a couple things. One, because they have vested rights in preliminary plan approval, we weren't really looking to take on the tree farm. But the other kind of piece of this is that the P&Z felt that we should honor the work that the Roaring Fork Valley Regional Planning Commission is the unincorporated P&Z for this area. They just adopted a master plan this summer. And so the P&Z's current thinking, unless, the consultant was pointing out other reasons not to, was to really kind of respect that work, although they might provide more details on some of the pieces of property that maybe a little bit more specificity about what the town was expecting. But they wanted to meet with the Roaring Fork Regional Planning Commission, but they didn't really want to take on something that was so new and current and had a lot of work behind it.
Okay. And similarly, Elgibel?
Well, Elgibel is a unique area in that it's in our 3-mile planning area, and I see Elgibel as maybe more refining the broader categories and what we would like to see for the Elgibel area, maybe giving more guidance to what we would like to see in land use proposals. We have, in 2013,
13, I believe.
we adopted a sub-area plan, and maybe re-looking at that and seeing how that area can, again, kind of complement the work that we do in the town of Basalt and not detract from it. James, you want to add to that?
Yeah, in the 2013 plan, it was pretty specific, and it was fairly consistent, I think, with what the landowners had in terms of their vision for the Elgibel area. So it probably might take some more discussions with the landowners to see if their vision has changed over the time since 2013 and kind of refine that piece of our future land use.
And I would say that their current plan is a lot broader than our current plan in terms of their kind of mixed use category, and we have a little bit more refinement in how we've kind of tried to structure what we're looking for. And remember, we're using this as a tool. The plan is a tool for, one, what are we going to annex, and what do we want to see for parcels that we're going to annex that are not in town, but also to give the P&Z guidance about what are we going to say in a land use referral from Eagle County or Pitkin County. So that's kind of a key piece of that base planning effort that we need to pay attention to.
Okay. Thank you.
Take out the competition. Giles Thornley, Connect One Design. Just a quick question. Do you have any lessons learned from the previous master plan that was put together that you would like us to consider for this go-around?
You know, every master plan process is so specific to the time that you're reviewing it. You know, in the 2007 effort, we really got bogged down with the urban growth boundary, which is an important concept, but it kind of took a life of its own. And you can never really prevent that from happening. I'll have to give that one some thought if I have any other thoughts.
Yeah, no worries.
You know, master planning is always an art, and part of that is in our citizen participation and what we're anxious to see what consultants have ideas for citizen participation, because you know, you can get meeting burnout with meetings. You know, there's pros and cons of a lot of different tools, but we're kind of anxiously looking to see what kind of response we're getting from people on how to effectively engage people and not just getting the same people that either respond to emails or you know, have the time to attend public meetings.
Okay, on the same vein, in terms of time and scheduling, I see we've got between March
Yeah,
and early December to get the
Yeah.
document completed.
yeah.
Do you have any key milestones based on time of year when the public is most involved in getting involved with politics and giving feedback?
Well, I know what the hard times are. They're almost every time of the year, really, right? I mean, you have the holiday season, which, you know, there's so much going on that just asking people to come to a public meeting just doesn't seem fair. The summer and the fall sometimes are really good times to bring people in. You know, the heart of winter sometimes is hard just because of the weather.
Okay.
James, Ryan, any thoughts?
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, if I'm understanding your question, can you not hear me from that? Okay. If I'm understanding your question correctly, that when's a good time of year to engage the public here, is that correct? I mean, the timing of this, you're gonna need to get public input, I would suspect, early and often, so kicking that off in the springtime, you know, seems appropriate. I mean, I think in the summertime we get people out on vacations, and I mean, there's always going to be hang-ups, but you know, I think what Susan said, holidays are tough, but you know, towards the end of the plan, ideally you already have the majority of the public input that you need. So I would suspect we'd be doing a decent effort on that front, you know, toward the beginning of the process, and you know, springtime, early summer type of a thing. Does that
Yep.
echo what you
Yep.
guys think as well?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul Donegan with Safe Built Studio, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the town has pursued annexation up to this point. I know that that was a big part of it, was you were looking for some guidance on how annexation should be conducted going forward. I was wondering how it's going now.
Well, it kind of ties to this urban growth boundary discussion. We have had a policy that we not annex anything unless it's inside our urban growth boundary. And if you looked at our current master plan, you'll see some pretty intensive land uses that are outside of town and inside the urban growth boundary. So we want to annex stuff that is in our urban growth boundary. That's our current policy. And I think one of the things we're asking the consultant is in the process to kind of evaluate that. Because it did cause some confusion, because we had an urban service area boundary that we used as a distinction, and we used it in the Elgibel area. And it meant that we weren't planning really on annexing you, but we kind of were expecting you to develop kind of suburban, urban, and kind of revisiting those policies. And we've had some times where in the recent couple years where people are interested in annexing into the town, but they're outside the urban growth boundary, and they're really not proposing urban uses, but there's a reason that they want to be in town. So it's kind of revisiting that. I think there are some of the counselors that would like us to have a fresh approach to some of the enclaves in town. I think that's mentioned in the RFP. I pointed out the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park. There's some other areas that are kind of developed and existing. Does the town aggressively go out and annex those? Our current policy has been not to.
Okay. And then an additional question. You mentioned incorporating climate change in the RFP, and I
yep.
was curious. I know that Eagle County has done a climate action plan, and that the town of Basalt was somewhat involved in that. I was curious the level of involvement in that and what sort of connection you see between those.
Well, the town of Basalt adopted the Eagle County Climate Action Plan for the community as the climate action plan for the town of Basalt. You can find it on the Green Team, where it has committees and there's Green Team, and you can pull it off there. We did a little addendum. To be honest with you, we weren't very involved at the beginning of that process. We tend sometimes, because if I had the map, I'd show you how far away the Eagle County kind of center is from the town of Basalt, but we were involved in the end, and the town of Basalt Town Council is very interested in green building and climate action, and how to effectively incorporate that into the master plan. Something I don't know that we didn't have the answer to, so we'd really like the consultant to do that. It was like the only item that when we brought in the budget and we were asking for money, they were wondering a little bit why we didn't ask for more money for those initiatives. So,
All right, thanks.
I'm just looking at the time because we have 10 more minutes. Pretty soon I'm going to go to the questions that, of anybody that emailed us. So is there anybody else that thinks they have a question? Second, I might ask, the first email that I have isn't asking a question. The second one, do you envision the master plan being graphically vibrant document, leaning more on maps, sketches, and other graphic tools than prior plans? And this is from Tim Malloy, TG Malloy Consulting. I think the answer to that is yes. Oh, you do? Can you, Watkins, I'm not seeing those pull up. Can you?
Sure. In order to be on the mic, I'll just drag it over. How about?
It's not probably gonna work.
Actually, why don't you just take this one?
I think there's enough slack.
Okay.
So Gabby from the SE group has 4 questions. What is the budget limit for this project?
Well, we don't have an actual budget limit, but the budget has $200,000 for this effort. That wouldn't include the town survey or the other work that's not included in the request for proposals. One of the reasons that we did that, the base plan and the high aspiration plan, is we weren't sure what the high aspiration plan would come in at, but we weren't trying to ask consultants to come in with a plan over $199,000. Kind of going back into that selection key piece that we're looking for, what the consultant is offering and what the cost is, and kind of recognizing that it's potential. We're not sure what things are going to come in at, that maybe we're not going to be able to do everything that we had intended, but maybe consultants are going to propose less than that. So we really weren't hoping to get 6 proposals at $199,000. Ryan, do you want to add any?
You nailed it. You're good.
Okay.
And I don't know if you could pull it up on your tablet, because interestingly, it's kind of disappeared here. But another of her questions was, what was the thinking behind requiring an architect to be on the team?
We were asking kind of for landscape architects and architects to be part of the team because they wanted, particularly for the downtown area, to have a strong design presence for that piece of it.
Okay. She also asks, how do you want to blend the recent Our Town planning effort with the new master plan? We don't want to duplicate efforts or have residents be fatigued by similar planning efforts back to back.
Well, again, we're trying to build on the existing planning efforts, particularly for the Our Town planning effort. So I think that the key principles, if you pull the Our Town planning effort, there are like 4, main guidelines. And the big V and those items, we're expecting those to be honored in the plan and not revisiting it.
And finally, what do you think the biggest issue facing Basalt in the next decade is?
Fire. I think that, this is more of a personal thing. I think that we all want to do more we want to do more. We want to implement things, but we are constrained by budgets and by the amount of staff that we have. We have about 34 total employees for the town of Basalt. So I would just say that we have high aspirations in how to implement those with current fiscal constraints. James, Ryan?
I think related to that is affordable housing has kind of been one of the biggest issues of the last couple of years, and I kind of see that growing and being even a bigger issue going forward.
Ryan?
I'll just sit here. I think both what you all just said is accurate. You touched on it, though, at first, the fire. I think we do have a changing environment here, and that was an indicator of maybe a more regular occurrence. And so sort of that resiliency planning and a good understanding of how to build and where to build. And then I think we're getting closer to build out. I know that there are a lot of, there's a number of parcels left, but trying to figure out what that looks like when we do come to build out and establishing and really coming into our own, so I guess that sense of place piece. We often hear that Basalt is like 2 different towns. You've got East and West Basalt, and sort of how do we begin to integrate those and establish those as one community? And so I think that's a big challenge. One of the things we talk about, of course, is connectivity. So how do we interconnect the East and West Basalt from a pedestrian, non-motorized standpoint, and also a motorized standpoint, perhaps. So I think those would be ones that I can think of at the forefront for us.
Susan, we do have some more questions.
Yep.
If there's time.
We have about 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Might not be able to get through this, but Cole from the MIG group asks, this RFP offers much room for creativity. Can you prioritize any of the base plan concepts and or participation strategies?
No, I think that, not offhand, no.
I think that's why we need them.
Yep. That's why we want professional advice. Yeah, thank you.
What types of community meetings have been successful and not so successful in the past?
Depends what your definition of success is, right? For the planners, they might be pretty uncomfortable. In the end, you might have needed to have that angst. The most unsuccessful ones are the ones that no one comes to, or that you've had too many and you have like the same 3 people that have come to every other meeting. I think that's the most unsuccessful meetings.
To what extent are the underlying policies is expected to be examined? So such as conducting a policy audit, stakeholder interviews, et cetera.
Can you repeat that?
To what extent are the underlying policies expected to be examined?
I think that, again, we're trying to build on our underlying policies, and we're not really starting from scratch. You know, to some extent, our survey will kind of give us an idea of if we're really off track. But I think a deep dive into those things aren't really what the P&Z was looking for. They were kind of trying to build on established things like we want connectivity in town. And so we don't have to ask people, do you want connectivity?
So last one, to what extent are the key parcels expected to be examined?
Well, I think I would be looking for the consultant to respond on that again, but what we're looking at is what guidance, what kind of future land use should be for parcels. You know, by way of example, the south side area on the map has a lot of, there's a lot of vacant land in the south side, even though Stotts Mill has been approved. And for those key parcels, you know, should they be industrial, residential? You know, what are some maybe new land use categories? You know, enough to give you guidance about what the town is looking for, particularly for developers that are pulling up our master plan and saying, what kind of proposal should I bring to the town of Basalt to land use applications and how we're going to approve them?
And he mentions.
James, did you want to add something?
I was just going to say, in the high aspirations plan, we were looking at maybe more detail on the Basalt Center Circle parcel over there, maybe than the rest.
Right.
He mentioned should land use and development analysis strategy be part of it?
Say that again.
Land use and development analysis or strategy is that to the extent that we're looking for, I guess he's asking?
Probably on the Basalt Center Circle property, potentially in the high aspirations plan. But I think we were talking about more of a future land use kind of evaluation on the other key parcels. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes. And with that question, I think I'll close off so that we can, Amy can get up to her next meeting. And so you have until December 27th, which is next Thursday, to submit questions. And I would just say that we'll try to answer them as best we can, but from past experience, sometimes you get, we've had consultants that have really laid on a lot of questions, so if we're we want to have a fairly quick turnaround time too, so just kind of keep that in mind when we respond to your answers to questions.
Will those responses be available to everybody?
Yeah, everybody that, sorry, thank you for the reminder, everybody that signed the sheet, and if you send me an email, I'll include you on the group email, and you'll get the addendum and the answers to the questions, and we'll also post it online. So thank everybody, and I'm going to close off now. Thank you, and thank Amy for filming us.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks.